Welcome to the Growing People Podcast, where we take a 360-degree look at how people and organizations grow and develop. I'm John Losi, your guide as we explore personal and professional development.
Right, we're back again for the third session of the 2023 Growth Expedition cohort, and this is the time when we're going to take a look back to define success for the next year. So we already start off the first section talking about celebrating, recovering, and reflecting. Second section was about reviewing and finding those lessons, gleaning those lessons. And now it's about taking those lessons and defining success. That's what we're about this time. And once again, I'm joined by Mr. Dan Miller, who's walking this journey with me. We want to invite anybody else into this. You can join anytime. It's never too late to be intentional about your growth. So, so Dan, did you take some time to find some lessons from last year?
Yeah, I did. Like I said, I really enjoyed kind of, instead of just attending to my feelings about the year, actually kind of, finding some data to back up my feelings and going through my calendar. And, I didn't have quite the depth of process that you have when it comes to setting up goals and setting them up in a way that I can kind of easily evaluate or grade myself. But my goal,
it only took me like 12 years to get there. So
yeah, my goal last year was very much around setting boundaries, what I say yes to, what I say no to, why do I say yes or no to things. And I think I did a decent job with that particular goal and that particular mindset. What I found is I was able to do a lot with that mindset and without really having a structure to my own process in my own life. And it's really interesting because that's, I spend a lot of my time helping other people figure out the structure. And when I say that, I mean, like, what are the things that don't change? What are the things that you can hold on to, aspects of yourself that you can always rely on, friends, family members, whatever. What is your structure include? And I haven't had that so much. I fly by the seat of my pants. And so the big learning for me is that I think I am capable of much more if I combined that, having boundaries, understanding my reasons for saying yes and saying no, and also really holding on to daily practice and holding on to thinking ahead a little bit more and not just, taking it day by day. The lesson to me is like, if I had as good of a year as I did last year without having much discipline and much structure in my own approach, I can only imagine how I'm going to do if I start to add that into the mix.
Well, good. I'm glad that this little bit of structure here is helping you structure the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, big time.
Since we last spoke, I set aside basically 2 chunks of time yesterday to do my review and my evaluation piece. And also I can separate out the evaluation along with just taking notes on what I learned. And I basically fell into a deep hole on analytics on yesterday morning. And I was looking at, Google Analytics, and I wanted to learn more about what's happening on my website. And then I found it was basically avoidance. Okay. I was avoiding looking at this because I had a hard year, and I was avoiding reviewing it because I knew there's some tough things I had to face. And, but I ended up taking about 2 hours or so. And so instead of 2 1-hour slots, I embraced my guilt and sat down, and I pulled out my I think I showed last time my reflections stuff. And then I took out my last year's, that I call them my guiding questions, because that's where it comes from. And you'll notice that the color coding started just last year, I think, or 2 years ago. And in those are how I put out my goals and my waypoints. So things like at the end of 2022, I will be even more in love with my wife. And then I listed things that I would do to make sure that happened. That was one that I did well on,
Nice.
by the way. But then I can go through and I use this along with the calendar reflection to score myself. And as I walk through, you'll see, like on this one, you can kind of see the pin marks and stuff that show the scoring. And let's see if we can, there it is. So I do a 3-point scoring system with 3 being I knocked it out of the park, 2 being I did it a little bit, and then 1 being I really didn't come close to getting where I wanted to be. I take all the opportunities I had and add it up, divide or multiply by 3 because that's the perfect score. And then I add up my score, and that gives me a grade. And it's not so much, I don't like grading. I don't like that as a term because there's so much baggage associated with it. But what it does is it gives me a numerical value of how close I got to getting a bullseye. And like I said, in June, just had a huge thing business-wise that rocked my world. As a matter of fact, I created an additional, in June, I went back and I think I called it the 2022 plot twist. So I went back and kind of did this again after the plot twist. And that was one of my big learnings, by the way. I was taking notes, and one big lesson is that I kind of need to be more aware when there's big plot twists like that. When how did I put it? Where is it? Major life events can throw me off my game. And I didn't like, I've had major things happen with clients, and I'm really good when I'm alongside of somebody, I can keep my head about me, or when there's a group involved, whatever. But when it was me, my family, my business, I didn't do nearly as well as I could have. And so my plot twist planning was a reaction, a fear reaction, not a controlled response. So that was a lesson that I learned. So while my like grading, if I was not just pure grading, I was getting D's and C minuses, but I allowed myself to grade myself on a curve and said that personally, I got a C minus given what happened. That threw me off. Business wise, I think even if I count my first half of the year, even without grading on a curve, I still did pretty well, but I still did a C, C work. And the great part that I realized by doing that kind of analysis is I can take a look at like, where were the pain points and where did I miss greatest? And also, where did I miss because it stopped being important? It just fell off the track. One thing that was really important that I missed after June is I got a morning routine that I would do, like kind of try and win the day by winning the morning. And that kind of dropped off a little bit, especially the personal side of it. The business side I kicked up, but personally I didn't. And what I found was, this is another lesson learned, is that like doing the creative stuff, like allowing time for music or drawing or just being creative, actually helps me with my practical stuff. And through fear, I dropped a lot of it. And that meant I was really pushing through. I was still getting stuff done, but I had to push. It wasn't nearly as effective. So here's my list of lessons. I'll share my screen here from 2022. And what we're going to do is, in just a minute, I'll talk about how we can use these to work on success for 2023. But I can turn my tasks into habits when I put them in a task list and calendar list. I got really good at being consistent with posting articles and sending out newsletters, and that stuff, when it hit both my calendar and my task list, I didn't drop them. But if they just stayed kind of passive alongside, I could easily ignore some of the things that I wanted to turn into habits. I don't allow people to help me as much as I should, and it's okay to invest money to get the help I need.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And it allowed, I mean, I always think, and this is what I rail out my clients about oftentimes, go, hey, we can do that ourselves, but you're not. I've got the talent, I've got the skill to do that, but do you have the capacity? You don't have the time. And that's where I could really I see improvement for my business. I learned that that's okay. In fact, it'll be essential.
Yeah,
I don't work on
investment in yourself,
Yeah, it's deciding. It's all like you have more important things that you need to do than you could possibly fit in your schedule and do them well. I could do it great if that's the only thing I was doing. So, but the other one, if I don't work on my emotional and social competencies, I'm not as good as I think I am at them. You use them or you lose them. I remember going back to when I was coaching somebody on emotional and social stuff. He came back at me and said, you know what? This is a lot like 12-step in that you have to take it one day at a time. You don't learn it in this cruise. You've got to wake up and decide. And that was another place where I kind of got on cruise control mode. And often when the difficult times hit, I found that I wasn't as emotionally in control as I like to think of myself.
And right along with the next one, I think it's the emotional competencies, emotional intelligence that really helps us when those plot twists show up.
Yeah. And this gets into, we went over the book of about resilience being forged through the difficult times and not being developed like you would develop other types of competencies. You have to be aware, develop, or they get forged when things get hard, and then you step back and you can see where you hit and where you missed. I talk about my morning routine is more important than I think, and that needs to almost be like set aside, almost like holy ground. Figure out it's difficult with children. It's not the type of thing I hear a lot of these people, I'll win the day by win the morning, all that kind of stuff, but none of them have kids. So
I have a friend who has 3 kids, and we were hanging out the other day, and he asked me, he's like, what do you do first thing in the morning? And I told him I poop. That's what I do first thing in the morning, like clockwork, and left it at that. And he's like, huh, that's cool. And I'm like, what do you do? And he's like, well, I think about my day. I think about what I'm grateful for. I pray, I put some intention, and I'm just like, oh, well, geez, maybe I could do more than just poop first thing in the morning.
Yeah, my poop usually comes a little later in the morning, but my son is always in our room at 6 a.m. and that's the rule. But I'm always up a little bit before that. And on my good days, what I do is I wake up and I pee. That's usually what wakes me up. And then I'll lay back and I'll do, like, I've got this Bible app. When I'm on my best days, I hit that first. When I'm not, I hit my email first, and that usually is the wrong move.
Amen.
But it takes about 10 minutes to go through stuff. I like it because it has like a devotional, and I last year I went through the Bible in a year, and it has video devotions, and it has the scripture and stuff you're supposed to read. But I find just like focusing on gratitude right off the bat, focusing on your source or your higher power or whatever you want to call it helps put everything in perspective. Focusing on Facebook first thing in the morning does not.
Amen.
I think that you helped teach me this one, which was the idea of giving away quality content is more important even when I don't see a return. It's a gift, not a trade. I had to get corrected myself because I was feeling, again, part of the whole summer thing. I think this was impacted by the client leaving, was also the fact that everybody else went back to their busy time in the summers. And I was sitting there without, missing, 15 hours a week for this client. And all of a sudden I've got all this space and everybody else is working and I'm not. And, but it's always good to do the meetings, take the meetings pro bono, offer things where you can learn alongside other people, and do it as a gift and not a trade. So
that's a great quote.
You may notice
I can hear me like saying that to myself in those moments where I'm like, this isn't fair. I'm giving all my stuff away and nobody's giving me anything.
Well, in essence, you're the one who said that to me, not in so many words.
Yeah.
So
I
when I rush, or even when I don't rush, I tend to miss details. I
Mhm.
love the fact that I've got Grammarly, which helps me with my writing and catching all that kind of stuff. But I still like publish before I should, click the button, and it's like, don't rush. Take that extra beat, take that extra time, and make sure that you're doing the quality work, especially when it comes to posting. I'm notorious for putting stuff out there with typos or with missing dates, or where the link doesn't match the meeting, that kind of thing. And also, I think this is marketing and building customer relationships are important for sustainability. I put too much into one client, and when they left unexpectedly, it left me hanging there. And I'm not one who loves marketing. I feel kind of icky when I do it. I need to get over that and realize that if I believe in what I do, then it shouldn't feel icky. It means that I'm really offering something I see valuable, and people should value it as much as I do. And then the last one you already hit, which is invest in me. You brought out. So that is my list of lessons. And again, that arose from stopping, celebrating, recovering, reflecting before I even started to try to review and evaluate. And it allowed me to be much less judgmental on myself, which I mean, having a hard year, I don't like to even be mediocre, let alone suck. And I felt that I was going to put that all on myself, and having that perspective helped me not do that. So
Yeah, I hope you post that list, John. I think it's just so helpful to see the results of a little bit of a time spent with reflection. And especially, I mean, I know that a lot of your audience is facilitators and trainers, and we are, I'll speak for myself. It's such a different thing to teach it and to encourage it in other people than to embody it, especially when it's most important for yourself.
yeah, well, it's being recorded, so it's out there.
Good.
So let's look at, between now and Monday, kind of some things that we can do to turn these lessons into success statements for 2023. And
Okay.
I'm a believer that so if you focus on the problems, then you'll recreate the problems that you're living with. So the very first step, and I do this with my coaching, I do this with my consulting and the advising that I do for companies. Yeah, let's spend a little bit of time on the problems and the issues, but as soon as possible, as soon as we agree and get clear on what those are, see if you can turn those into success statements. So instead of working to avoid things, which is avoiding problems and avoiding issues, you work towards something. And in shifting your focus, it forces you to create a new path. You've existed in the world that created these problems and these issues, and the tendency is to steer towards what you look at, which is a well-worn path to these things. But as soon as you can redefine what success is, it sends you down a new path where you don't recreate the past, but you forge through into the future. And it's not always easy to change these statements. For instance, if you're, I'm trying to think of a real one that I just went through. The idea of what I'm facing right now is I lost a bunch of hours of work and a bunch of income. And if I keep focusing on the loss of hours and the loss of income, I stay in that mindset, and I'm stuck. You know, we talked about, you know, Paul Simon's definition of stuck being every path I looked down led me to a place I didn't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, and that's what I need to work on this year, is how do I change that into a success statement and have me pointing forward? And it's not about making up a loss. For me, it's probably going to be something around, you know, some of the major things in there is basically, I've got to set a goal of how much new business I'm going to create. So it's not about making up what's lost. It's about creating new.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, I don't feel stuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not reminding me of that I lost something, which keeps me stuck. It's saying, one thing that just like Paul Simon, he never like he when he's stuck, he doesn't see any options, but he never thinks that he's going to run out of options.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that through when you're stuck, it's because either you need to figure something out or you need to make something up. And those are two things that are in my wheelhouse. I'm really good at making stuff up and figuring stuff out. I just need to apply that to me.
Right. Gets back to the creativity goal.
Exactly. And
you know, the other
creating
thing, John,
space.
is in the issues and problems area, like that tends to be where blame and shame live, which I have not found to be a helpful partner in success.
Yeah. So once you have a mindset focused on success rather than problems and issues, now it's a matter of identifying the finish line. In the guiding and adventure world, that's setting your destination and being crystal clear about what the finish looks like, about what the destination looks like. And as you're going through and thinking through your both the success statements and what success looks like, you try to identify a few themes, not a whole bunch, but like maybe 2 or 3 themes that will help you recognize what success looks like. And it could be anything from like financial stability. It could be about that you want to produce something this year. You want to make something, like, for instance, it's by, you know, I want to create more content. I want to be more financially stable. I want to collaborate more. And those are like 3 themes that then you can start build out. So what would that actually look like? This is where the only reason you do only a few is because then it's hard work to say, what would it look like? What will it look like if I'm more financially stable? Specifically. And then you start coming up with the different, what would it look like? Picture yourself in a silent movie, and what would it look like if you were financially stable? And then you take what you see in that, and that turns into some success statements.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you want to get it to, all right, if I have 3 months reserve in my savings account by the end of the year, let's say, that's financially secure. That means that we could live with 0 income for 3 months. Yeah, that'll work. Then let's say you do another one. You notice that I'm putting an end date on it too.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't always have to be a year.
Gotta be timely.
What's that?
Gotta be timely.
Right, exactly. And these are the bigger picture ones. But so let's say, like, I want to collaborate around content, and I want to have that collaboration set and have whatever format is chosen. I want that by the middle of the year. So let's say June 30th, I want to have 10 episodes of a collaborative podcast or YouTube or something by the end of by June 30th. All right. So now you're starting to see that it's not only like it's very measurable, it's specific measurable, it's all the smart stuff. But before you get there, you know, you want to make sure, like, for instance, having specific financial security is 3 months in the bank, in the savings. Measurable is 3 months worth of it. And there's that timely piece of it. So you can track progress towards the end of the year. Is that attainable? Yeah. I mean, that's totally within the realm of reason. Is it relevant? Oh yeah. And there's a time bound, is the time factor. So next, in order to really make this a success statement and make it actionable, you want to talk about your starting line. And for the same reason why you move from issue and problems to success, you start with the finish so that you're not bound by where you're starting. There's sometimes that if we start with our starting point, we look around and we're limited by that perspective. So I need to take a look for the financial one. I need to take a look at our bank account and say, where am I starting from? How close am I to having 3 months in the bank?
Mm-hmm.
All right, what do I need to do? Where am I at right now with collaborators on content? Well, right now, I've got to make a list of people I hope to collaborate with and reach out. Right now, I don't have anybody to collaborate with, and I don't have a format for it. That's the starting point. I know the ending is having 10 episodes in some sort of format with a collaborator.
Mhm.
I can mark progress that way. Now, the oops, wrong one. The way that I like to format it, when at the end by Monday, I want to have themes developed and then one success statement per theme. So for instance, I gave you a success statement with the collaborating on content. I gave you a success statement that looks like that. And that's how this stuff turns into how you gauge progress at the end of 2023.
Mhm.
And so now you see, I mean, it's really helpful to create a crystal clear target, because what's a target other than a way to measure how accurate you are? When you paint the target, you can use it. And most people don't use their success statements or their SMART goals as a way to gauge progress and success. I can walk throughout the year now and look at how far along the road am I, because I have specific ways to measure it. So that's between now and Monday afternoon, when we'll get together, is I hope to have probably maybe 5. I'm hoping for 3 success statements that I can start build a plan off of, because that's the next thing is pathfinding or making your plan. Part of that is we now have a gap that we can look at where I'm starting from and where I want to finish. And we can look at the obstacles and also the opportunities that fall in that terrain between those two. So that's what's coming. That's where we're at. Thoughts before we wrap things up?
To clarify for my own homework, the success statement is the one that says I will get from X to Y by Z.
Correct.
Yep. No, I love the little pieces of homework in a specific period of time. This is really working for me in
Good.
terms of going much deeper into goals than I usually do. And I'm a believer that when you just saying something out loud, making it real, taking it from thought into word is the way to make things, take flight. I think that that's really valuable. And then it doesn't have to stop there. And that's what this process is teaching me.
And in practical creativity and in any creative process, think it, speak it, write it, share it. And if you use that process and get to sharing it, the likelihood of you making that real is incredibly high.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because as I'm finishing up the Pottery Panda book, and I'm actually in the spot right now. I'm wrapping up in the ending of his implementation. So Peter the Pottery Panda has made a strategic plan. He's shared it with people. He's gotten feedback and he's implemented it. And now it's coming to the end of his implementation and he's thinking through all this stuff. And a big thing that's come out is from early on, he went to his RPG, Raccoon Practice Group. And he's got friends there now. And in sharing, he would use that group to post his progress, both in the planning, but also in implementation, and get feedback, encouragement, support as he lived it out. And I think that's one of the things in real life. I get that from our guided practice groups, from our books, book club, book club, and other places where I put it out there and it becomes accountability. I also have people smack around a little bit and said, John, you need to fix that, or you missed this part. That's always good. So
yeah, that's the piece about asking for help. The other thing that came up while you were talking about kind of just starting to imagine what it would be like if is, I'm a believer in the law of attraction, and so taking that even one step further and is in addition to imagining it, like really feel what it's like, imagine it as deeply and as much of a sensory experience as you can. And I think that also contributes to making it real. I think that if people want something, then giving it this kind of attention is just so worth it.
Well, and then using that experience that you just created, like I like to use the motion picture exercise where you imagine success. What does it look like up on the screen? And then you mark the behaviors that you see to help you say, this is what success looks like. Well, when you manifest it like that, you imagine it, you feel it, you live it, step back out and take some notes on that, because that's the feeling that you want at the end of this process. The other thing that happens, and this happens to Peter the Pottery Panda, and it happens to me, when it gets rough, and it will in implementation, it's easy to lose sight of how important success is. But if you felt it as deeply as you described, you can go back and say, yes, this is worth it. It's worth it to keep going.
I
Because
know what it feels like, because
Yeah.
I felt it, and I want more of that.
Yeah. Yep. So, and so that's what we're going to get to. What we get to on Monday is what most people jump to when they think about strategic plans and strategic processes. They just jump right into planning, and they've forgotten a lot of this pre-work and prep. And then they just jump right into the pathfinding without context. And I can't imagine doing that if I were leading an adventure, leading an expedition or whatever. You would never do that. You would do all your homework beforehand and then start planning, because if not, it gets really expensive, not only just in supplies and time, but in health and security. So,
Yeah, and a little bit of proactivity can save you a lot of headaches.
totally.
That was my roller derby name when I was in wilderness work, was proactive strategies, because there's some things we just know are going to happen, so we might as well plan for them.
Yeah. And when you've taken that, you've got the stress of these things that you can anticipate off your back. The things you don't anticipate can be handled.
Yep.
So, well, thanks for being here again, Dan. I hope I see you on Monday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific, and we can talk about some of the success statements. I'll share whatever success statements I define.